Okay, I think I'm ready to go. Wait a minute. There we go. This is going to be an interesting video. And the comment section is going to be even more interesting. So let's just jump into it. Hi, I'm Damian. This is my channel. The only other video on here is my intro post. So we're really jumping straight into it. And I promised there'd be art, but this isn't art. Assuming that you read the title, this video is about my experience being both trans and Christian and how that works. And I wrote an actual script. There's 3 pages in front of me of what I wrote, and my laptop just shut off. Yeah, like I said, I'm both trans and Christian, which in our current society are 2 conflicting things. So I'm gonna jump into that because I am not only Christian and queer, but I am also left-leaning. Not all Christians are right-leaning, but I do kind of get into that near the end here. But yeah, so I am currently I want to be completely transparent about how my standing, what I'm doing right now. So I was raised in the Baptist church. I stopped going for a time when I was like, what was it, like 8 to 13, and then I started going again on my own free will, and I had continued to go to a Baptist church, but that was mostly because I knew people there, because I had been invited to that church. But currently I'm researching other denominations, specifically Lutheranism, because I've heard that can be more accepting. But regardless of denomination, regardless of like those specifics, I am a believer. I do believe in God. I do believe that I was made by a creator, and I believe that that creator makes no mistakes. And I believe that I was made in his image. But how does that work? I don't believe that my gender was a mistake. I believe that it was something that was given to me to make me different, to make me who I am. And as for my gender identity, I'm trans male. So I was born female, I identify as male. This is like the most basic form of transgenderism or transsexualism that you will find. Not any shade towards anyone who is more non-binary than I am. All respect to you, full respect, I'm just not. So that's how I wanted to present it. So yeah, I intend to medically transition throughout adulthood to make my physical appearance align with how I feel internally. I could not picture myself growing into a woman at all, but that is one of the main things that cemented it in my mind that I'm transgender. I feel most comfortable when I am perceived as male, and I feel discomfort and frustration when I am perceived as female. There are moments where I am hyper aware of my own femininity, and there are moments where I completely forget that I'm perceived as female by most people. Like I had said, a lot of trans people, or a lot of people who perceive trans people, believe that their transgenderism was due to a mistake. Some people do believe this. I'm not part of them, like I said. I do not believe my assigned gender was a mistake. I am of the personal conviction that God formed me to be this way and had a plan for me to be this way. Because there are certain people that I wouldn't have been able to evangelize to if I was born male. There are certain experiences that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was born male. There are certain, just like, I am a more rounded person because I have seen both sides, and it is important that transgender people exist to be that bridge. I also believe that God has made transgender people to show people not to put so much stock in their assigned identities. And there's a verse that I wanted to include here because I feel like that's relevant. It is Galatians 3:28. There is no longer Jew nor Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. A lot of trans people like that, and I really like that, obviously, because I chose to include it here. But what I personally gleaned from that verse is we are all born of different things: ethnicities, position, wealth, location, appearance, sex, mentality. But we are all God's people, and we can all lay that down, because although we were given those attributes, in the end, the reason we were given those was to lead us to God. There's also the point that God has made us creative and curious, and we are so eager to know more and create because we were made by a perfect creator. We were made in his image, and trans people have been able to remake themselves within God's parameters. God has given us the building blocks and to let us play. He has led us to discover ourselves, and even though it brings pain at times, it brings passion. God lets us write, paint, love, build, and I have made myself. With God's guiding hand, of course. I love this line from the book by Julian K. Jarboe. Jarboe. Put the name here. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name, but I will also link the book. When I had found it, I thought it was a line from a poem, because I was so entranced by it. And I haven't read the book yet. I intend to. But this quote, I actually just found out that it was from a book and not a poem because I was researching it. But the quote is, "God has blessed me by making me transgender for the same reason he gave us wheat but not bread, and fruit but not wine, so that humanity might share in the act of creation." I just think that's really gorgeous, and it really describes the mentality that I'm trying to get at here. I have 2 verses here that I actually want to break down because I've heard them used so much in anti-trans biblical things. So I have found them, I've researched them, and I will now be talking about them. And the first one is the main one, Genesis 1:27. So God created humans in his image he created them. Male and female, he created them. Right here in the book of Genesis, especially in this first chapter, it uses a poetic device called merism, where it shows 2 extremes to, like, describe the whole. So if you look, it describes day and night, but it doesn't describe dusk and dawn. It describes the ocean and the land, but it doesn't describe a marsh or a swamp. There's also certain things, like it describes animals that are on the land, air, and sea, but it doesn't describe something like frogs that bounce between them, or flying fish that bounce between them. So yeah, it's a poetic device called merism that is used a lot in Hebrew text, to describe the whole. It's 2 extremes to describe a whole. The second one I have for you is Deuteronomy 22:5. And that verse is, "A woman shall not wear a man's apparel, nor shall a man put on a woman's garments, for whoever does such things is abhorrent to the Lord your God." And this verse I had to do a lot of research on, because there is a lot out there that just says this is anti-cross-dressing, but also it is in a chapter that is just a lot of quick-fire rules. So we're not given much context, so it's a little bit difficult to fully grasp what's being said here. And a lot of rabbis and scholars have argued, because of the original Hebrew text, a lot of the words that are used here, specifically the word for man and garment and apparel, a lot of it describes warriors or armor or some form of weaponry. So it doesn't argue against cross-dressing necessarily. It's more in reference to warriors not donning women's apparel. Partially because that was it was heavily used to be deceitful and to specifically hide weaponry in women's apparel during battle. So there's that. There's also associations to, like, rituals to other gods that are used in this means. And considering the context for Deuteronomy, considering how they're going to another country, they're going to another space, it's a lot of pushing back against those other ideals and pushing God forward. So, not necessarily against cross-dressing or trans people or even drag queens. It's about not being deceitful in battle, or not being deceitful more generally, but also possibly honoring God instead of honoring other gods with our rituals and what we do. Which is heavily pushed around the whole Bible and is specifically very apparent here and very important here in the space that it's used in. There's also more general comments, like you're destroying the body that God gave you and your body is a temple to God. And I believe I heard this said by Pastor Paul Dries on TikTok, because I just really, really like this analogy, where we don't tell people who got, like, life-saving surgeries that they're damaging the body that God gave them. They're not affecting the temple. They are making it more suitable to live in. They're protecting it. They're taking care of it, really. And more so specifically, transgender people, a lot of them deal with self-destructive acts. So, taking care of your body is pushing yourself to not harm yourself. So there's that. There's also the analogy, also from Paul Dries, where we don't call it blasphemy when an old church repairs or updates it with an elevator or something to more suit the needs of the people who inhabit that church. It's welcome improvements to take care of the church, which is another temple of God. So it's taking care of the body that you are given in the best way that you can, in the best way that you can use it to serve. Here at the end, I wanted to talk about, outside of the Bible, why do we hate on transgender people? I had to get my tea for this one. Outside of the Bible, why do we get so upset about trans people? And I bet you weren't expecting politics in this video, but that's what you're gonna get. The Bible is very quickly adopted by more right-leaning people because it is a very, very useful tool to oppress people, even as much as it talks about anti-oppression. It's very easy to use this kind of odd list of rules and try to impose them onto people. Otherwise, you're going to burn in hell for all of eternity. And it's also easier to twist because it's this collection of ancient texts. So a lot of people grabbed onto it really quickly. And why would we want to oppress trans people? Well, because frankly, we're difficult to stick in little boxes. And when you can't stick people in little boxes, you can't separate them. When you can't separate them, you can't control them as easily. So there's also the aspect of, this is kind of on the same note, but trans people kind of break down the patriarchy in a way, because we are bending those traditional gender binaries and those gender roles by changing our sex. So that's another means that we're breaking down these more right-leaning ideals, and that's why it's so hated upon. And then people use the Bible, God, my Lord and Savior, to push hate and to push this control narrative, which I have very strong feelings about, and I've shouted to everyone I know about this fact because it upsets me so deeply. I'm out of tea, so I'm like out of energy to do this video. But yeah, the golden rule, say it with me now, love your neighbor, love thy neighbor as thyself. So the more we push back against our siblings in God, the more we're not following the word. The less we're following the word, the more we're going against specifically Jesus' teachings in the Gospels. Because his main thing was love your God and love thy neighbor. So how am I trans and Christian? I read the book, and the book didn't say I couldn't. Also, as I said, there's so much joy that comes with being trans and walking with the Lord. I feel like a lot of trans and queer people are kind of pushed away from the church, obviously, because of how it treats people like crap who don't follow their jurisdiction. It's not the right use of that word. Who don't follow their set guidelines. So I want to make this video not just for myself, but to also say, if you're trans or if you're queer, do your own research, and yeah, God would love to see you if you would love to see your God. That sounded like I'm a real salesman for the church. I'm just trying to evangelize. Leave me alone. I'm called to spread the word, and I will do it even through YouTube videos. If you're trans and Christian, or if you're queer and Christian curious, I will link some resources and some creators that have been useful to me while I'm going forward in my walk. And if you came here just to clown on me, I will use that block button and the delete button very, very liberally. If you want to have a discussion, if you want to have an argument, but if you want to just shoot me, I ain't standing for that. Leave me alone. This is my channel. If you want to put questions about transgenderism, I'll be happy to answer them. Maybe if I get enough, I'll do a Q&A thing. But yeah. Final thoughts. I'm out of tea. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And make sure you're loving yourself. That's an important part of that too. I hope you have a good day, night, evening, afternoon, wherever you're doing. And yeah. Enjoy your time on the internet. Take care of yourself. Editing Damian. I had 2 other clips that were meant to go between, like, me talking about the line from the book and then me getting into the verse in Genesis and Deuteronomy. But I forgot about them until I'm going through everything now, and I realized they're not in there. But if I were to stick them in where they're meant to be, I would have to go back and do all of my text. So I'm just going to stick them here, and you're going to pretend that it's good. I had already covered the whole God doesn't make mistakes thing at the top of this. But there are arguments that it's just not natural, but if you look at the rest of God's creations throughout the animal kingdom, it's very natural. You look at fish, you look at birds, there are some that are gender non-conforming, there are some that transsex, depending on what is most useful at that time. Personally, I think of like clownfish, because they change as what's needed. So obviously, gender can be fluid and sex can be fluid, but even by God's own creations. And then obviously from our own people, there are intersex people and there are people with mismatched chromosomes, and that, excuse me, that just lends to just interpreting it as more fluid than what some people present.